And it's just well known in the industry that the Chinese don't export that much gold. Occasionally they'll export some for refining, but they got their own refineries. And so for the most part, it all stays there. So we also have to know how much they had in the 90s when they turned off the export spigots and said, we're keeping it all in house. We're keeping all of it. Thank you very much. Hey everybody, this is Rob Keens reporting for JM Bullion. It is December 28, 2022. We have got a year-end review up on the YouTube channel for JM Bullion, guys. If you want to look at it, please go take a look. It is out there. We do sort of a year-end review and let you know what happened and all the major things that that were important for the year. And we're going to start with some new topics. And today we're going to talk about China. How much gold does China actually have? And we're going to give you a number. This is sort of the best number that we can put together and what we think really is there. And we think it'll be helpful to you guys to see that because China is a major competitor to the US and in terms of their central bank and in terms of their economy. And so one thing that we want to do is kind of track how they are in terms of gold. How much gold are they using? The other thing that we like to do this to track world gold flows to different countries, kind of know who's got the gold trade, you know, how much demand is there, who's buying it, what are they buying it for? Do you think we're going to back a currency with it? Do you think they're using it to capitalize their system? Are they just trying to get an edge economically? Is it for industrial use? There is a little bit of gold that gets used for industry, and there's a little bit more that gets used for jewelry as well. And that's something that we're interested in sort of tracking to see who has the most. Wanted to remind you that if you're interested in purchasing bullion, we have a link down there in the description for you guys that you can click on. You do have free shipping on orders of $200 or over, which you can get by clicking on that link, and you'll have full access to the jmbullion.com store. Really helps JM Bullion out for you guys to do that, and they're a great company. I fully recommend. I am a happy customer. That being said, let's jump right into the share screen here. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at several different sources of gold flows into and out of China. We're going to examine the Shanghai Gold Exchange, and then we're going to make a best case guess about how much gold they actually have. And I want to emphasize that this gold is a combination of gold that their citizenry and their commercial sector may use, as well as the banking sector, because we don't actually know how much they all hold. It's not reported, but we can surmise based upon who are the biggest buyers and based on world gold trends, how much is actually there. And it's exactly what we're going to do. And I think it gives us a pretty good ballpark estimate. So then when we know how much gold is going out of China, how much is staying in, how much that they have, and how that could affect available inventories going forward as far as what's on the market. And further, it's important to understand whether or not China has enough to make a play at some point to back their yuan currency with gold to make it stronger on the world stage, you know, as they begin to build out their own economy and sort of challenge the US for supremacy, which I think is what's been going on. So we're going to take a look at some different data here and try to get an idea of what they may have. What we're looking at here is a chart provided by Gold Charts R Us. It's a subscription service that I pay for. And this gentleman collects a bunch of gold data from various sources around the world. There are literally hundreds of charts you guys can go look at. This one in particular is tracking Chinese gold production, which is in the yellow down here. So you see the yellow area is the amount of production that China has had domestically. Now, this chart goes back to 2008, but I'm going to show you a chart that goes back to a much earlier period of time because we need that information to see basically how much China have in gold now. And the reason for that is gold is basically almost indestructible, and it stays in some sort of jewelry bar or coin format, most of it ever mined. And so it sits above ground. And so if we simply track all the inputs and outputs for gold, we can get a pretty good idea what's there. Gold is not like silver in that it's used ubiquitously across millions of products in little tiny amounts. And a certain percentage of it, therefore, will go to scrap and recycling, and a certain percentage will go to landfills that we never recover. Gold is a little bit easier to recover. It's not used as much industrially. It is used in small amounts in things like computer main boards, but there are recycling businesses that take those and cell phones and extract whatever gold is in them. So we do get a lot of a lot of gold scrap recycling going on, which comes back into the market. And you'll notice that the SGE, the Shanghai Gold Exchange, you can see SG up here, the Shanghai Gold Exchange is the China market, or in the Chinese version of the COMEX or of the London's, the LBMA and the OTC market. This is China's gold market. And so we can see here, this is their production. And we also know that this is the amount of Shanghai Gold Exchange withdrawals. Why would I put withdrawals from their exchange on a chart when we're trying to figure out how much gold China has? Well, because China has export restrictions on gold. There are only 13 entities that are allowed to export gold from China proper, from the Chinese mainland, from that market. And there's very little that actually leaves. And I'll show you in a minute how much actually leaves. It's not that much. And I've got information from the UN on that. So they export very little. That means most of what comes through exchange actually stays in country. It's not taken out to Russia. It's not taken out to the US or to the UK or to Africa. It's not exported. There will be a little bit used in industry that gets exported to the world, but the vast majority of gold stays in China. Those are government programs that restrict the removal of gold. Now, the Shanghai Gold Exchange itself sits within something we call a free trade zone. You can extract gold from that free trade zone, and we'll show you how we track that using a UN database. It's not that much. Far more comes into China than goes out. Now, what we're also going to look at in this analysis is how much is imported into China. We got a chart for that too. So let's go over and look at that. So on this chart, we can see how much is imported. You'll notice this number, the gold production domestically in China, and what they import through the Shanghai Gold Exchange, because all domestic production and all imported gold in China must go through the Shanghai Gold Exchange so that they can track the gold trade. All of it must go through. So when you look at gold imports, a lot of it comes through Hong Kong. Here are the numbers. And we'll add those up for you at the end and show you how much they are. But this number, the imports plus what they produce, so what they produce in the world from the mines and what they import from other exchanges and from mines, is a lower number than what they get in the Shanghai Gold Exchange, because you're also adding into the Shanghai Gold Exchange any other domestic production, recycling, scrap, anything else that gets dumped on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. It might have been domestic holdings, private domestic holdings that get bought and put on the commercial exchange itself, and that makes up the whole number. So this is a bigger number, and you can see that the number is approaching 28,000 tons. So if we believe that all of the production since 2008 and all of the gold that routed through the Shanghai Gold Exchange actually stayed in China, which the majority of it does, they easily have 28,000 tons. Now, how many of those thousands of tons, and this is by the black line. So this is cumulative. This is by year, the bar chart, the histogram, and the line chart is the cumulative. That's how I get almost 28,000 tons. You go straight across here, 28,000 cumulative tons. Here's the number, okay? Most of that should have stayed in China. Some of it would have left a few tons here and there, not much, on things like computers and main boards, but the vast majority will stay in, and it's either owned by the people or it's owned by the state. That's basic logic. It's not hard to get there. All right, so now we have to we want to know how much goes out. And don't worry about the numbers. I'm giving the numbers in this format, and I'll come back and do an accounting or a basic math problem on showing you how much we have. And I've got that on a document, and I'll show you just a moment. So don't worry too much about the numbers. Well, I went to the Comtrade database, and this is what I found. And on that Comtrade database, you can query for the amount of gold that moves around the world. And code 7108 is gold. You can do that by going to Comtrade database on Google, looking up gold on the chart. And this is all forms of gold. And I did it just for this year, just to see in 2021 what was China's exports. And so they're exporting from China to the rest of the world, partners, and second partners, if there are two people involved, world, export everything. So this is everything that China exported. For 2021 so far, 53,495 kilograms. Well, how much is that, you say? Well, typically when we're looking at gold, we usually talk about it in terms of ounces or tons, not kilograms, because ounces and tons are more the English system. The rest of the world tends to use the metric system, so we get it in metric here. But if you change kilograms to tons, you basically get 1,000 kilograms as a ton, so you get 53.495 tons. And if you want to know ounces, you just do a simple conversion from tons to ounces, or from kilograms to ounces. You can find those converters on Google. But because this is the metric system, you just divide by 100 and you get tons. So instead of 53,495 pounds, it's 53 tons. Okay. So now we know that China in all of 2021 exported 53 tons. When gold price is going up and the world wants gold and central banks are buying like nobody's business the last 10 years. So you would think that if there were a lot more free gold in China, it would have left. But remember, there are 13 entities who can export it. It can only be exported in certain ways, and there's not much exported. So we've proven that based on the UN data. So if we look at imports, let's go back, to the import chart. This is the plus imports. If we look at this year, China has imported a little over 300 tons this year, and only 53 has gone back out. So the net import is 250 tons in this year. So yes, there is some that flows out of the country, but it's relatively small compared to one, what they're producing over 300 tons, and two, what they're importing from other producers and other exchanges was also over 300 tons. They got 700 tons in and only 54 tons left. And by the way, some of this could actually come back in. This could have been exported for remelting. It could have been exported to solve short-term contracts, and it may all eventually work its way back in. And I think most of it does, because the only number you really need to know is what is the difference between their importing and exporting, and that tells you how much they're keeping. And so now we've got to that number. And the last number we need to get to, ladies and gentlemen, is on this chart. This is China's actual internal gold production. They have their own internal gold production. And this is a chart according to US Geological Survey information based upon the data that's reported by them and China. And it's put on a site called ceicdata.com. I simply queried it and got a chart. And I went and added up by hand all of this data. And I'm going to show you what that data adds to in a minute. But a couple of things here that I wanted you to understand. China's gold production, they have become one of the largest producers in the world. Back here, they were number one producer. I think they're either number one or number two, even though it's fallen off just a bit. They're still up there. And a few years ago on Seeking Alpha, I wrote an article about one of the biggest gold producers in China called China Gold International. And I said they were suffering for some debt and some mismanagement of the company. They had some challenges with mining. They got all that fixed, and it was a great stock. It went from under $1 to over $3. It was a great return for people in the equity space. And I said, watch, China wants gold production. They're going to amp it up. And over the last 3 to 4 years, they've amped up production. So China Gold International is a large portion of this increase that you see here from the last few years. And that stock has done very well. Why? Because the Chinese government wants to assist all of their gold companies in mining gold, because they want gold in their economy. They want it for the central bank. They want it for the people, because it's solvency for them. Think about it. China's trying to align themselves as one of the strongest economies in the world. Gold has a 5,000-year track record for being money and being a high-quality liquid asset in the banking system, even though Basel just recently defined as that it always has been in practice and in reality. And so China knows that. So as China is rising and challenging the U.S. system and the U.S. dollar, they're taking on huge amounts of gold from their own production. And they're one of the largest producers in the world, and all of it stays in the country. And so there you've got another source of Chinese gold. Now, not to be outdone, we also have to go back and say, well, we looked at Chinese gold dating back to the 1990s. And we've seen how much gold that they've produced, how much gold that they've imported, how much has come through their exchange. And we know since the 90s that they never exported gold. They were a net importer, very little exportation. This is in World Gold Council publications dating back to the mid-90s, and I've read those. And it's just well known in the industry that the Chinese don't export that much gold. Occasionally they'll export some for refining, but they got their own refineries. And so for the most part, it all stays there. So we also have to know how much they had in the 90s when they turned off the export spigots and said, we're keeping it all in house. We're keeping all of it. Thank you very much. And so we have to look at how much the People's Bank of China already had. And so we've got that. And we had to look at how much the Chinese population held, because the two things that the Chinese population really invests in is, one is gold and silver, precious metals, and two, real estate. Those are the two biggest investment markets in China, more than stocks, more than government debt and bonds and all those types of things. And now that they've banned Bitcoin, a lot of the monetary demand and investment demand is going to go into gold and silver and not Bitcoin. And so we know that the Chinese are circling around gold, not Bitcoin. They are going to do a central bank digital currency, but for solvency of their system, they're circling around gold. And so what we want to know is basically, how much do they have? And I think it's pretty instructive to go and look at that. And so if you look at all the numbers, according to the World Gold Council, in some research I did, a document that they had back in the 90s, Chinese people had 2,500 tons of gold in jewelry format. And that's gold available to the government or available to the economy. Because remember, the Chinese people can sell that and melt it down, and it can go straight to the Shanghai Gold Exchange. In fact, the Shanghai Gold Exchange facilitates a large jewelry trade in the UK, a large jewelry trade in Hong Kong, and a large jewelry trade domestically. And so a lot of that gold leaving, that 54 tons, went in the form of jewelry. That's almost all the exports are to jewelry makers in the UK, in China, and in Hong Kong. And so they are big users of jewelry and manufacturers of jewelry, and they do a lot of 24 karat. It's not the cheaper 10 and 14 stuff a lot of times you see here in the US. They're doing straight up 99.99% 24 karat jewelry, or at least 22 karat, where you get, in the low 90s, and you get some other metals in there to make it stronger, but it's high metal content, high gold content jewelry. We also have to look at the People's Bank of China, their official holdings, which are 1,980 tons. So we know that they've taken 1,980 tons off the market officially. And then we know that gold production over the last 30 years, dating back to the 90s, was about 8,000 tons. And we know that imports are 7,200 tons. So if you want to know all the gold available to the Chinese economy, it is 20,680 tons. And that's conservative, because remember, they could also buy in the market. So this is what we can track via official numbers. And all of this gets split between the people and the central bank. Now, the central bank may not hold all of this in their coffers, but they can put it in their sovereign wealth fund. It can be owned in trust through another government agency where they don't have to print it. That's why they see printed 1,980 tons, but they can have more. A lot of it also has on purpose been distributed to the people, because China realizes the value of precious metals, and over thousands of years, they have a relationship with precious metals, much like the Indians do, where it's part of their ceremonies, it's part of their culture, it's part of their investment strategy. And so we think that they have more. They could possibly have 30,000 tons. When you talk about how we've gotten reports from analysts and traders on the London OTC market, which is a highly opaque market where all the trades are basically private and not printed anywhere. And you don't even know who's in, whether it's a sovereign, whether it's a company or an individual buying that gold and silver. That market's very opaque. And it's been known that China's been using proxies to go into London market and pull gold out. And so they've been pulling gold out of the West. We think they also do it in COMEX through the use of some bullion banks or managed money types that could be standing for delivery on their own house account, and you could get gold to China that way. So it's highly suspected between market participants that China has also imported a lot of gold from the West. So I think the 20,000, about 700 ounce number I put on the screen is probably somewhat of a low number, to be honest with you. I think quite possibly it is a lot higher. We just don't know because we don't have those records. But we do know this, to recap: China does not allow a lot of gold to leave. A lot of what leaves is to their business partners in the UK and in Hong Kong to facilitate the jewelry trade. It goes into an investable format and may actually come back into China to sell through their market or to sell through the local markets. That is vast minority amount of gold that ever comes into China is exported. A lot more every year is imported and exported to the tune of multiples of multiple times. And most of that gold stays in because they have export controls. And most of that gold goes into either government coffers or the public. And so all of that could be used to support the Chinese yuan, to support the Chinese economy. And then China is relying on the 5,000-year history of gold. And that's the importance of what they're doing. Why is that important? Because, well, if you believe in gold and silver in your portfolio, that's a big sign that one of the major players on the market, the second largest economy in the world, that's growing into the largest, they're the next great nation, is betting on gold. So why wouldn't you bet on gold? Why wouldn't you, for your personal finances, say, well, heck, the Chinese are doing it, why wouldn't I do it? I would, and that's why I have this partnership with JM Bullion, and that's why I recommend JM Bullion. Remember that you can find that code to go shop in their store below. It does help us to provide this content for you. And of course, you'll get a good deal with JM Bullion, as they always do. For right now, you're getting free shipping on $200 orders. And that's a really great place to be if you use the link that I provided you. Nice little bonus for you guys there. Thank you so much for watching this. This is going to wrap it up just about for 2022 content. We do have some more content coming out Sunday. We'll have our weekly market wrap for you guys, and we have some more blogs planned. So we'll be here next year. We appreciate everybody for joining the YouTube channel for JM Bullion this year and being a part of it and riding shotgun with us as we explore the precious metals markets. We wish you a very abundant and happy and merry holidays, and we will see you back again in 2023. Until next time, Rob Kientz with Gold Silver Pros reporting for JM Bullion.